It was subtle at first. The way she'd glance at her phone when I handed her flowers. That half-smile when I offered to run her errands. I used to think it was just fatigue from work or maybe distractions piling up. We all have off days. But this wasn't that. She used to light up when I surprised her. I remember once she teared up because I fixed the cabinet hinge she'd been annoyed with for months. I used to know how to reach her. Now, every gesture felt like it was being measured for effort, only to be discounted. A few weeks ago, we were sitting on the couch. She mentioned her friend's husband planned an anniversary getaway. She laughed while saying it, then added, "Some guys just understand romance better." I waited for the wink, the warmth. Nothing. She just returned to scrolling through her phone. It stuck with me. The jab had weight. I started paying closer attention. The following Saturday, we had lunch at a little bistro she once loved. I made a point to get reservations, even called ahead to make sure they had her favorite wine. She barely touched her glass, said she was watching carbs. When the bill came, she didn't say thank you, just stood up and walked ahead to the car. On the drive home, she said out of nowhere, "Real affection has to be earned. Lavish gestures don't mean connection." I didn't answer. There was something off in her tone. It sounded rehearsed, like something she'd read and decided to try out. That night, I offered her a back rub. No agenda, just habit. She pulled away and said, "You're too eager for praise. It's not attractive." I sat with that for a while. Years ago, I could give her a cup of coffee in bed, and she'd pull me in, kiss my forehead, and say I was spoiling her. Now, I offered the same, and she waved me off. Said she was late. No eye contact. Just a passing dismissal. It wasn't resentment that started building in me. It was confusion. I thought maybe I had missed a cue, or perhaps I had grown inattentive. So I doubled down on effort. Brought home dinner from that Thai place she used to crave, and booked a weekend massage session for her after a stressful week. Not once did she acknowledge any of it. She used the gift card, sure, but said, "I didn't ask for this. You're trying too hard." At the grocery store, I reached for her favorite yogurt, and she muttered, "I can handle it. Stop acting like I can't take care of myself." That moment hit harder than I expected. She never used to talk like that. We once had a rhythm. She'd lean into me in line at checkout, joking about people watching. Now she stood 2 feet away, arms crossed. When I asked if everything was all right, she said, "You always ask that. Maybe stop acting like something's wrong all the time." I began noticing how affection had become something I was supposed to earn, not something we shared. I'd reach out, and she'd pull back. I'd make plans, and she'd criticize the effort. Then came the sentence that froze me in place. She had just come back from lunch with some new friends she'd met at a workshop. She was glowing, not with me, but from them. I asked how it went, and she said, "It's refreshing to be around people who don't need constant approval." That's when I realized I was no longer a partner in her mind. I was a performer. That weekend, we were driving to her cousin's birthday. I'd offered to take her, even though I was wiped from work. On the way, she stared out the window, then said quietly, "You should try earning my affection instead of expecting it all the time." I didn't say a word. I just gripped the steering wheel and kept driving. That line stayed with me the rest of the night. At the party, she barely acknowledged me. Told people I was just being quiet when they asked. One of her cousins made a joke about how I was the chauffeur. She laughed. Not nervously, genuinely. Later, when I pulled into the driveway, she didn't wait for me to park. Just got out and walked inside. I sat there in the car, staring at the dashboard. I'd given her rides, gifts, time, plans, meals, and comfort because I loved her. And somehow, that had become evident in her eyes. Earn my affection. That phrase kept looping in my mind like a taunt. It was a demand, not a request. A line drawn in a game I never agreed to play. That night, I didn't reach for her in bed. But I noticed everything. The silence where laughter used to be. The calculated indifference replaced the shared joy. And most of all, the shift in the rules. It wasn't about us anymore. And I was starting to understand I had been funding something that no longer valued its source. That realization didn't come with rage or heartbreak. It came with a permanent. I wasn't going to argue or prove myself, but I was going to stop spending affection where it yielded no return. And the moment that choice became real, everything started to change. The first thing I withdrew was the effort. No warning, just a decision. That Sunday, she dropped hints about needing a ride to the salon downtown. Usually, I'd have offered before she finished the sentence. This time, I sipped my coffee and replied, Sounds like a full day. You'll want to leave early. Her expression tightened for a second. Then she gave a quick shrug and scrolled her phone. Later, I heard her muttering about surge pricing on the Ride app. I still shared space with her, answered questions, and made the bed. But I ceased anticipating her comfort. That's what she'd trained me to do. Predict needs before they became complaints. It felt like peeling off a skin that had grown too tight. I didn't check in during her errand runs. She returned home to silence. The grocery bag stayed in the car longer than usual, but I kept reading on the porch. She brought them in with loud footsteps and set them down with even louder footsteps. Once she started describing her friends' husbands in glowing terms. One was a take-charge kind of man, always planning date nights and surprising his wife with small gifts. She turned to gauge my reaction. I asked if she wanted help cooking. She frowned like I'd missed the point. She never mentioned that friend again. Dinner that week felt like business meetings. Fewer smiles, fewer glances. The conversation stopped flowing. I asked her how her meeting had gone, and she replied with a single word, "Fine." Then silence. She wore a new blouse one night and waited in the hallway longer than usual. I glanced up from my chair, gave a slight nod, then returned to my book. She lingered. When no compliment came, she disappeared upstairs. The car was the next domain. I started using mine more, separate errands, separate drives. Once, we left a gathering in 2 different vehicles. She said she was staying longer. When I reached home and got settled, her voice came through the door a half hour later. "You could have waited." I replied, "You said you were staying." She shut the door harder than needed. By the middle of the week, the requests turned pointed. "You haven't planned anything in a while." I nodded. "Been busy." She waited for more. There was none. She left the room in silence. She stopped folding my laundry. I didn't ask her to resume. The socks and shirts were stacked up, and I handled them on my own. Small acts that once felt like care now came with strings. And I'd stopped playing tug-of-war. Thursday night, she sat beside me on the couch, too close for the way we'd been lately. I glanced up. She was staring at the TV, but she'd angled her body toward me, like a spotlight without words. After a long pause, she said, "I don't feel seen." I let the sentence settle before answering. "You're looking at a man who felt that way for months." Still calm, still steady. She opened her mouth, then shut it. That night, I worked late. She texted around 10 asking when I'd be home. I didn't answer right away. Finished the spreadsheet, packed up, then drove in silence. When I walked through the door, she stood in the kitchen holding a mug. "Could have let me know." I replied. Figured I didn't need permission to finish work. She didn't like that answer. Saturday brought a new attempt. She asked if I'd join her and her friends for brunch. A few months ago, I'd have rearranged everything. I said I had plans. No details, just a plain sentence. She didn't argue, but I caught the look, disbelief edged with frustration. Around noon, she called. "Want me to bring anything back?" I said, "I'm good." By evening, she was testing her voice again. "You seem checked out." I replied, trying something different. Her eyebrows lifted. "What does that mean?" "It means I've been showing up for someone who keeps raising the price." She blinked, searching for a response. None came. The next morning, she was more upbeat. She made eggs, even set my usual mug by the coffee pot. I poured the brew and thanked her. No kiss or extra affection, just acknowledgement. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie that night. I said I'd be out and leave before sunset. On Monday, she asked if I could pick up dry cleaning. I looked at her calmly and said, "You'll pass a cleaner on your way to work." She tilted her head. "That's a weird response." "No, it's just different from the one you've grown used to." I walked into my office and closed the door behind me. Later, I overheard her telling someone on speakerphone, "He's changed. I think he's trying to punish me." The word struck me oddly. Punish? This wasn't retaliation. This was realignment. She'd gotten so used to the stream of comfort, convenience, and yes, that the absence felt like cruelty. But I wasn't being cruel. I didn't pull away with bitterness or spite. I simply ended the daily sacrifices that came without acknowledgement. I unplugged from the reward loop that no longer fed anything meaningful. She tried probing a few more times. Brought up memories. Asked if I remembered our first date. I nodded, told her it was a nice night. Then went back to what I was reading. She asked what I was looking for these days. I told her I was looking for balance. She asked what that looked like. I said, mutual value. She didn't respond. Evenings grew quieter. Her tone softened, but the edge was still there, just beneath the surface. She was waiting for the old version of me to reappear. But that version had been running on empty. And now? I was conserving what remained for someone willing to meet me halfway. By the time she asked why I'd grown distant, I had already crossed the threshold of something more profound. It wasn't a mood, or a season, or a rough patch. It was a decision. The old habits, checking her calendar for convenience, texting updates when I ran errands, double-checking the fridge for her favorite brand of sparkling water. Those routines ended quietly. She noticed the change, but didn't grasp it. She assumed I'd bounce back, that I'd break the silence with an apology, that I'd refill the space she left with fresh effort, because that's what I used to do. Instead, I let the silence hold. I stopped guessing what she wanted. I stopped fixing things before they broke. I stopped running ahead to shield her from discomfort. I went to work. I worked out. I called my brother for the first time in months and caught up like we used to when things were simple. I ordered dinner for one without hesitation, a feeling I used to have about eating solo. Turns out, the food tastes better when you're not resentful. She came into the room one night and asked if I was okay. I'm centered, I said. She waited, as if there'd be more. There wasn't. I used to fill the void with lengthy explanations, clarifications, emotional outreach. Those were part of the script. Now, I was rewriting the scene, line by line. A few days later, she tried baiting me into an argument. Something about how checking out was emotional immaturity. I stood calmly at the counter and stirred my coffee. Maturity means knowing where your energy goes, I said. She left the room muttering. I stopped monitoring her moods. I let the storm pass without lifting a bucket. If she slammed drawers, I read my book. If she sighed loudly during dinner, I finished my plate. One evening, she asked if I wanted to talk about us. What part? I don't know. Just where things are going. I looked at her. For the first time in weeks, she seemed uncertain. I'm moving with what's real, I said. That's where things are going. Her brow furrowed. And what does that mean? It means the version of me that used to orbit around your reactions, he's off duty. She opened her mouth, closed it again. I started waking earlier and going for walks without saying where. I picked up new books and made playlists that had nothing to do with shared memories. When she asked what I was listening to, I answered plainly, no invitation to join. The following Saturday, I declined brunch with her extended family. I used to feel obligated. Now, I didn't reach for excuses. I've got things to do, I told her. She looked disappointed. But I wasn't the one managing that emotion anymore. That night, she brought wine to the living room and asked if I'd like to watch a show we used to enjoy. I'm good, I said. That show lost its meaning. She stayed in the doorway, bottle in hand, unsure whether to argue or retreat. You're acting like we're strangers. No, I said, standing. Strangers offer courtesy. This is clarity. I walked past her to my office. She started texting more and sending reels and articles. I used to respond with emojis and comments. Now, I left them unread. A few days into this new rhythm, she came into the kitchen while I was prepping lunch and asked, "Are you seeing someone?" I shook my head. "I'm seeing myself." "Wow," she said. "That's dramatic." "No," I replied, slicing a bell pepper. "It's overdue." She scoffed and left. That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. By midweek, she asked what I wanted from her. "Nothing. You don't want to fix this?" I leaned on the counter. "This?" I gestured between us. "This used to be a partnership. Then it became a stage where I performed and you critiqued." She crossed her arms. "So now you're punishing me by going silent?" I looked her in the eye. "I'm giving you what you claim to value, space." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was clean. I began packing a few bags that weekend. Nothing dramatic. I left the closet half full. I was stepping out of the echo chamber. She saw the suitcase on Sunday afternoon. "You're leaving?" "For now." Her voice cracked. "Why?" "Because a man doesn't invest in what treats him like a transaction. I never said you had to buy my love. You didn't have to." She stood frozen. I stayed at a friend's guest house for the week. Woke up to peace. No tension hanging over breakfast. No emotional tax. She texted, "Are we separating?" I replied, "We're shifting." She called twice. I declined. For years, I extended affection like an open tab. Now the account was closed. Because the kind of man who once gave without limit had realized something essential. True generosity isn't blind. It's discerning. And mine had gone to someone who treated it like background noise. That frequency had been shut off. She called the first night I stayed away, voice trembling like she hadn't expected silence to echo quite so loudly. I let the phone ring. It stopped. Rang again an hour later, same outcome. By morning, a message arrived. Are you okay? I stared at it while finishing my coffee, then placed the phone face down. 3 more texts followed. Each one is less composed than the last. She asked if I needed clothes. Then, she asked if I was punishing her. Then said she was confused. That last one was honest. She used to have the upper hand through implication, suggestion, withholding. Now she was grasping, unsure of what piece to move. I had removed myself from the board. By midweek, she came to my office unannounced. My assistant buzzed me, said someone was here. I stepped into the lobby. She stood there holding a paper bag. Thought you might want lunch. I nodded toward the receptionist. Can you let her know I'm booked till 4? My wife turned her head toward me. Seriously? Very. She blinked several times, said she'd wait in the car. I returned to my desk and resumed work. Time passed. By 4, she was gone. That night, another message arrived. This is getting extreme. I replied. Perspective arrives in silence. No answer came. Over the next few days, she began interacting with friends again. Those same names she once used to inflate herself during arguments. This time, I saw photos without me in the background. Dinner posts. Group chats. One of those friends messaged me directly. She seems off. You okay? Clearer than I've been in years. I didn't explain. Later that week, she dropped by the house where I was staying. My host texted, someone's here asking for you. I asked them to say I was unavailable. 2 hours later, another text from her came in. Can we talk? Tomorrow, I wrote. Public place. We met at a quiet cafe. She looked different, less confident, more alert. I watched her hands fidget with the sleeve of her jacket as I sipped black coffee. You've changed, she said, eyes searching. I've returned, I answered. To what? Self-respect. Her jaw tightened. I never asked you to leave. I stepped away when it became clear my presence was only appreciated when it served convenience. That's not true. I raised an eyebrow. She looked away. Everything's transactional now, she murmured. Then you understand the cost of one-sided generosity. She leaned in. So you're punishing me. I shook my head. Punishment implies anger. I'm choosing clarity. Her following words were slower. Measured. I miss the way you used to care. I haven't stopped caring, I replied. I've just stopped proving. She sat back, silence thick between us. She tried another angle. I didn't realize how far gone we were. That's because the comfort kept flowing. You assumed the river would never dry. Tears welled, though she blinked them away quickly. Back at home, neighbors had started noticing, too. One of them, an older woman who'd seen us over the years, waved me down outside a grocery store. You two used to walk together. Haven't seen you in weeks. I smiled politely. Some walks lead home. Others lead away. She patted my arm with a knowing look. Keep walking then. Even her sister reached out. She says you've gone cold. I replied, I've gone still. Her sister paused, then said, she's scared. She taught me fear doesn't count unless it benefits her. The conversation ended there. Back at the house, her social feed changed. No photos. No clever captions. Just reshared quotes about loss, healing, and change. She tried again that Sunday. Sent a voice message. Her tone was softer, stripped of performance. I've been selfish, she said. I made everything about winning. I listened once. Then again. Each word weighed heavier than the last. Still, I didn't return. 2 more weeks passed. She began doing things she used to leave for me. Car maintenance, grocery runs, calling the bank. I knew because I'd still get email notifications. The woman who once scoffed at domestic duty now waited in line alone. She emailed a photo of the kitchen. Said, I cooked. Your favorite. I looked at the message for a long time, then archived it. Some days later, she stopped reaching out. I felt the shift before the inbox confirmed it. The quiet that used to unsettle her had become familiar. It was the stillness that followed truth. She built a dynamic where affection had to be earned, not shared. Where support was expected, but never reciprocated. And now, that model had collapsed. The result wasn't rage, revenge, or retaliation. It was a withdrawal. Her structure required constant emotional funding. I had closed the account. 3 weeks have passed since the last attempt. 3 full weeks of quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't echo, just settles. I kept my rhythm. Morning walks. Clean meals. Focused work. Each day added a layer of steadiness I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. Then came the letter, folded with care, hand-delivered to my office. No envelope, just my name, centered on the page, written in the handwriting I'd memorized long ago. I read it slowly, then again with stillness. She'd written about memories, our trip to Oregon, the rainstorm in that cafe, her first birthday we shared. Then she asked one question. Is it too late to return to something real? The wording stopped me, because return implies loss followed by clarity. But clarity alone doesn't rebuild. I folded the paper, slipped it into my jacket, and drove to the lake. Sat on a bench and watched the ripples move like breath across the surface. I thought about the years I spent interpreting her silence, decoding her moods, covering her emotional blind spots like a volunteer firefighter on permanent duty. That part of me was retired. The version of me who sacrificed warmth to maintain peace wasn't returning. Back at the house I'd made my home. Temporary at first, permanent by instinct. I looked around at the stillness. Everything had a place, and that included my energy. Her following message asked to meet again. This time I agreed. We met at the park. She arrived with minimal makeup, wearing the jacket I once complimented her on every time she wore it. That part of her remembered, but I was watching more than a presentation. I was listening for alignment. I've been going to therapy, she said. I waited. I realized I never learned how to value what comes freely. I assumed it would always refill. She took a breath. I want to try again, this time with integrity. I placed my hands on the table between us. Do you understand what respect requires? She nodded. Then you'll understand when I say this. I'm no longer available for speculation. If you're unsure again, don't look in my direction. Her eyes welled. I thought we'd have more time. I tilted my head. We did. You spent it. The wind moved through the trees above us. She tried again. I can rebuild. I believe you, I said. But restoration isn't always reunion. Her hand brushed toward mine. I didn't flinch, but I didn't meet it either. She looked away. That night, I returned to my place, lit a small candle, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and read a book that had nothing to do with reconciliation. It felt like air after a storm. I heard from her once more the following week. She thanked me for the conversation, said she was continuing the work. I wished her well. Nothing more needed to be said. Years ago, I believed love meant holding on. Now, I understand. Love includes self-respect, boundaries, and the refusal to remain where value is conditional. She once asked me to earn her affection. She learned, through absence, that affection spent without recognition eventually ceases. I was resolved. This isn't a tale of revenge, just a man who reclaimed peace. And a woman who realized affection isn't a performance to be managed. It's a currency backed by reciprocity. When that lesson arrived, the story ended. Precisely the way dignity sounds when it returns.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.